Hey everyone, Jason Schappert here of MzeroA.com, and myself and the MzeroA.com team are so proud of our new private pilot online ground school. It's going to be coming out very soon. Depending on when you're actually watching this, it may already be out now. A lot of love has gone into this, from animations to great in-flight footage to awesome in-studio footage as well. And I want to start sharing with you some sneak peeks into the course and inside some of my favorite videos and the team's favorite videos as well. So this one is a longer video than a typical MzeroA.com video, but it takes you through and helps you get a better understanding of VFR sectional charts. And if you love this video, you're going to love all the courses and all the videos inside the new online ground school. There's going to be a link in the video description below or above this video for a 2-week, no strings attached, free trial of our course, whichever course you want, private, instrument, commercial, doesn't matter, that you can check out there. So we'll let the ground school video play, and afterwards go ahead and take action on that free trial. In this lesson, we're going to learn more about VFR sectional charts. You can consider this lesson really like map reading for pilots. This lesson, by the way, is going to be significantly longer than some of the previous lessons we've gone through. It also includes a link for a download of our VFR chart symbology underneath of this video. So go ahead and take a moment to download that so you have it. You can have it separately on the iPad. It might be a bit much to print. It's quite a big document, but on an iPad or even in a separate window would benefit you, because this is something you're going to reference through the rest of lesson 10 now. Now, it doesn't matter, by the way, if you intend to use paper or digital charts in the cockpit. The symbology is the same, so you need to know this information either way. This lesson builds on the previous lesson of airspace as we put it all together now on the sectional chart. This is a foundational lesson. I guarantee you'll be asked about aeronautical charts on every check ride you take, in addition to the knowledge tests. Let's begin with the facts you need to know. For starters, visual flight rules, or VFR sectional charts, are the primary means of navigation. We use them to find airports, avoid special use airspace, find control tower frequencies, determine what airspace we're entering. We use them to find out what frequency to contact the tower on, or to get the automated weather as well. There's a lot of information on these charts, and they cover the entire United States. Now, the VFR sectional charts are valid for 6 months. On the front of the chart is a date showing when the chart came out and when it expires. It appears on both paper and iPad presentations, the digital charts as well. So let's say the VFR sectional chart came out on December 18th. It'll be good until June 18th. Once it has expired, it's a good idea to take it out of your flight bag, assuming you're using paper charts, right across bold letters for ground training only, because you can still use it for practice, but we don't want to navigate off of an expired chart because things change. Radio frequencies, even airspace can change. You don't want to be flying with bad information. The charts are named, by the way, for the largest airports really within its boundaries. And on the front of the chart, there's a map showing the continental United States with the chart you're holding actually shade out. So you can kind of see which sectional chart we have. Now, a sectional chart covers a good bit of airspace. So when the chart is unfolded, it expands about 5 feet across. So you want to practice folding and unfolding so it doesn't take over the cockpit as well. When the chart is folded properly, one side has a designation plate showing the name of the sectional, the issue, and the expiration date, and the other side, the legend showing the symbology, similar to what I had you download. Now, if you're using those paper charts, you'll want to make time to purchase that new chart when the new one comes out. With iPads, it's even easier, though. You just download the new one. You'll get a push notification that says it's time to download the new chart. So let's now take a look at what the FAA calls the VFR Chart User's Guide. I recommend you download this. Also a link to that as well that you can download, free PDF from the FAA. What you're looking at here is the symbology for the airports that you'll see on the charts. Now you can follow along as I use the arrow to really point out what we're talking about. This opportunity too to make sure this is playing in full screen so you can really see everything. Now let's start with the basics. On the chart, blue airports are for towered airports. Magenta, that airport is magenta, is for a non-towered airport. On the sectional chart, we'll see tab marks on the circle designating the airport. Now those tabs that you see around that airport tell us that there's services available at the airport. Now more often than not, this means fuel is available at the airport, at least part of the time. Tabs around usually mean fuel available. Now when the runway is actually longer than 8,069 feet, it's shown with lines drawing the runway out rather than fit it in the circle. You ask, why 8,069 feet? That won't be on a test or anything like that. This is more just your fun fact for the day. How they print it based on pixels. They print it to scale. So a smaller runway looks smaller in that circle, a larger runway looks bigger in that circle, so it's somewhat to scale. Well, based on their scale, a runway that's greater than 8,069 feet, using their scale, wouldn't fit inside that circle. So then break it out of the circle and just physically draw the runway there. Now continuing to look at that airport, the star on top of the circle there, that tells us the airport has a rotating beacon. Now, a rotating beacon is going to help us identify the airport at night. Let's move on now to airport grouping information. Now, this is the detailed information on the airports that's going to appear on the sectional chart. Over the right side of the page, you have the legend that's going to walk you through everything. Example, FSS. That means there is a flight service station there at the airport. The flight service station is where we get our weather briefings. The flight service station also processes our flight plans. Beneath that, we see the phrase No S VFR, which stands for Special VFR. No Special VFR, meaning that is flying in limited visual conditions. That's not allowed at that airport, most likely because the airspace is just too congested to allow something like Special VFR. We see the name of the airport. We also see the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. We can tell that because we have the letters CT next to that frequency. Well, that tells us there is a control tower. In this case, it reads 118.3, which really tells us the tower frequency is 118.30, right? They drop that 0 off at the end there. All tower frequencies, you know, have 5 digits. It's the 0 is kind of, it's left off because it's implied, sort of like how we access a website. No one types in www dot anymore. It's simply just implied. Now, the letter L, that tells us there is lighting. If there is an asterisk next to the L, that means there's lighting information, which more often than not means it is pilot-controlled lighting. You, the pilot, can actually control the intensity of the lights. If we see the letters RP next to the runway, that tells us turns in the pattern for a particular runway are to the right, because RP stands for a right pattern. You can learn more about that in the US chart supplement to see which runways or when that applies here. Now let's take a look at how to identify electronic means of navigation that are going to appear on the sectional chart. VHF, omnidirectional radios, more commonly known as VORs, are identified with this blue compass rose and rectangular box that gives you the frequency to actually listen to the VOR. The actual VOR itself kind of looks like a hex bolt, as you can see. And if they have distance measuring equipment, DME, they have that hex bolt in the box as well. Now, if a VORTAC, if it's considered a VORTAC, which is essentially an old military VOR, the symbol is shaped kind of more like a Roman shield in a way. Some VORs are located on airports. Others are set off away from airports. We're going to be learning more about VORs and navigating to VORs in a future lesson, but this is just to introduce them, how they appear on the sectional chart. Now, we have something called Victor Airways. Those are like our highways in the sky. You learned about those a few lessons back. Remember, they travel from VOR to VOR. VORs, by the way, have a 5-digit frequency. The 0, again, is always left off. We're supposed to kind of just know it's there, just like with our voice frequencies. Now, the name of the VOR and the Morse code identifier, that series of dots and dashes, is also given. Now, you don't need to know Morse code to be a pilot here, and you're going to listen to them. We're going to talk more about that when we get to the VORs. You'll be able to tell the difference between a dot and and a dash, I promise. Now continuing on here, on the right side, we see these magenta, it really kind of looks like a flower in a way. And there's a 3-number designation. Well, these flowers are actually symbology for what's known as a non-directional beacon. We're going to call it an NDB. Now, NDBs, just being honest with you, are 1930s technology. It's modulation radio, and it's very, very quickly being phased out, right? It's kind of like payphones and everything else. As technology changes, we phase it out. It's so much so that the FAA has actually said that when these NDBs break, we're no longer fixing them. No one's making parts to fix them anymore. So slowly over time, these will be completely faded out. Now, to use an NDB in the airplane, your airplane must have an automatic direction finder, which is an ADF. Your aircraft may not even have an ADF, so NDBs may be of little or no use to you. We're still going to talk about them, though, in a future lesson. Now, airspace decoding is key for the sectional charts. It's going to be the same across your sectional chart as well as a TAC chart, which we'll talk about in a future lesson here. You'll learn about that one. We'll read about some of the others here. Let's look at our airspace. This should be a quick recap. Class B airspace is shown in blue. Class Charlie airspace, that solid magenta line. Class Delta airspace, dashed blue line. We just learned about that in that previous lesson. Those improper fractions, well, that's associated with our airspace dimensions as well. Class Echo airspace, remember that tough one we covered a little while ago? Well, it's also depicted, so we can identify whether it starts at 700 or 1200 based on our domestic en route or Class Echo transition areas here. Now, also Class Echo airspace, but still those lines, those blue lines, those highways in the sky, remember those? Those are our Victor Airways, and therefore our IFR traffic. And I know we're flying VFR, but even on a VFR day, there's still someone out there flying IFR and operating on those IFR routes. We would want to be vigilant on our cross-country flights because we're just flying out there for fun, but someone might be on one of those highways in the sky. It's going to be important to note when we're flying past that. We don't want to be, you know, the guy who's playing Frogger going across these highways in the skies without looking, without knowing what's coming here. And speaking of things that can hurt you, by the way, here's some symbology we really need to know for special use airspace to help you avoid it. This airspace, by the way, is color-coded, and it really spells it out for you. Prohibited airspace, restricted, warning areas. These are all shown with these blue hash marks. Now, magenta hash marks are used for alert areas and MOAs, or military operation areas. The solid thin magenta line here, that's our Mode C veil, which we've spoken about. And it also has some frequencies around it of the controlling agency for any airspace, if appropriate, to contact them. Now that we're aware of the symbology, let's take a look at an actual sectional chart and practice decoding the information. We're heading to the Ocala Airport where I do a lot of flying. Ocala International Taylor Field. Then the 3-letter identifier, OCF. By looking at the sectional chart, we can see that the Ocala Airport is Class D airspace. Class D airspace has a control tower. We know that because it's depicted in blue. We can also read the control tower frequency as 119.25. The star next to that tells us the tower is part-time. The letter C in the circle tells us the frequency for the tower is also the common traffic advisory frequency, meaning when that part-time tower closes, I still broadcast like a pilot-controlled airport on that frequency. We can also see the Automated Terminal Information System, or the ATIS frequency. It's the frequency that gives us our weather. Beneath that, the number 90. It tells us the airport field elevation is 90 feet above sea level. That's important because very often traffic pattern altitude is 1,000 feet above airport elevation. So in this case, we'd be flying the traffic pattern at 1,100 feet, 1,100 feet MSL. The letter L with the asterisk tells us there's a lighting limitation. It could be some experimental lighting the FAA is testing, but more often than not, we know it as pilot-controlled lighting, which means you actually use your microphone switch to activate the lights and the lighting intensity. The next number, 74, tells us that the longest runway at the Ocala Airport measures 7,400 feet. And the last number, 123.0, is our Unicom frequency. Unicom stands for Universal Communication Frequency, which we would use to contact the FBO, the fixed base operator on the field, to request fuel. Now, we can learn a lot about the region we're flying in by studying that sectional chart. We see a lot of magenta circles on this sectional chart, which tells me there's a lot of pilot-controlled, non-towered airports in the area. Several of them, by the way, are private airports. Those are indicated with the letter R in the circle. The R stands for restricted. Most often the private airports are grass strips. You cannot land at a private airport without prior permission, unless it's an emergency. And you have to be ready to explain yourself when you land. We can see we have a military operations area and a restricted area near the Ocala Airport. This tells me we're likely to see some military traffic in and out of the area. Remember, they are a lot faster flying than we are, so we're going to be extra careful when operating near their airspace. If the MOA or the restricted area is in use or hot, well, we don't fly in a hot restricted area. You can fly in a hot military operations area, but it's on a, you decide kind of basis. You cannot fly in restricted airspace when it's hot. But I could fly through a military operations area with my head on a swivel when it is active. Now, when we start doing our night flights, this will be important. The sectional chart shows us cities and towns below us, and they're actually shown in yellow here. This is important because on those night flights, you'll be amazed at how accurate the shapes of those cities appear, because when it's dark, the lit outline of the city is what's prominent. In the more rural areas, you'll see the name of the community next to, with a circle next to it here. Here we can see Candler, the town. It's a tiny town, actually. Depending on what part of the country you're in, the rural areas stand out because if there's a number of large barns or grain silos or farming, right? Like if we're a Midwest farming community or Pacific Northwest small timber towns, look like a combination of matchbox cars and blue tarps, right? Well, the white line here tells us that there's a terminal area chart in the Ocala area as well. Like I said, we're going to learn more about what that terminal area chart means in the next lesson here. The sectional chart shows us the frequency box for the Ocala VORTAC. That frequency to receive the VOR is 113.70, or channel 84 if we're flying in our military aircraft, which uses a different radio. The three-letter identifier for the VOR and the Morse code, which we use to identify it before we can really trust it for navigation to make sure it's actually working. The number on the top left side of the box is the frequency for Gainesville radio. This is the folks we open and close our flight plan with. Now, those upside down V shapes on the sectional chart, well, those are obstructions. They could be water towers or cell phone towers or just simply TV antennas. The top number shows us the height of the object. The number beneath it in parentheses shows the height above the ground. You can remember this by thinking it this way. The top number is what your altimeter will read if you hit the top of it. The bottom number is how far you'll fall. MSL versus AGL, right? Now, this is a quick shot here of the Class Bravo airspace over Orlando. We know this is Class Bravo. Why? Because of those heavy blue lines. Bravo means busy. We need permission to enter the airspace. We need to hear the magic words cleared in the Class Bravo airspace. We can see the shelves of the Bravo marked with our improper fractions. We can also see there are more obstructions located a little east of the airport. Those towers with little lightning bolts coming off them indicate the obstruction has a light at the top of it. For your homework, get a hold of a sectional chart, and if you don't have a current one, you can use the Chart User's Guide, or I'll give you some websites here in a bit, and go through it and see if you can correctly identify things on the chart. If you don't have access to a chart, you can go to a website like skyvector.com. Skyvector.com, go to your local area, and you can see VFR sectional charts for your local area, and start to find some symbols you don't realize. And then go ahead and head down and look at the chart user's guide, look at the legend, look at the symbols, and see what you're going to find and learn and discover in your local area. Now, trust me, you're going to want to spend a lot of time with the sectional chart. I mean, when you're on the ground or whether you're in the cockpit, you want to spend the time on the ground, because in the cockpit, if you have that map out, all 5 feet of it, right, it can be a little daunting to try to learn everything here. Whether you choose to use paper or an iPad, I want you to become a master of this here. You're hurtling through the sky at 100 knots. I don't want you fumbling around with a chart or with an iPad. I want you to master it on the ground. In the next lesson, we're going to look at the TAC chart, which is kind of like a blown-up version of busier airspace on a sectional chart. I wrote the private pilot blueprint with the intention of, if I could do my flight training over, what I wish someone would have told me. And I want that book to be yours for free. All I ask is that you pay shipping. Visit privatepilotblueprint.com to get your free copy.